most simple cases, but still I do not have any presenter. So what I would like to do is that before I talk about, can you see my screen? Can you see the screen, ladies and gentlemen?
Yes, sir.
Good. So if you can see the screen,
Yes, sir.
the last class we talked about how to mention the diagnosis, and today the main topic of discussion is to take you through the treatment of hernias. Now, before I say anything, all of you have done lot of hernias in elective and emergencies. You know more or less all the steps about a hernia surgery. Some of you may have done even a laparoscopic hernia. Majority of you have seen and understood a laparoscopic hernia. So with this background of my audience, the discussion that I'm going to do is what a surgical exit examinee, not only for an DNB, but also for an MS, an FRCS or an MRCS, should be required to know, and what is the flow of the questions. And what is very important is we will like to talk about some controversies that examination times demand, and we should know about what is the strength of evidence or something called as evidence-based practice as of the year from 2019 to 2021. And till this time, as of my knowledge, we do not have any international consensus that is of yet. The last of the consensus is of 2020 about what should be the treatment procedures for groin hernia, and the level of our evidences that we are going to talk is this year's combined consensus that we are going to discuss. So as I've said, today's class will be a reorientation about what you are going to say in an examination. As I have said, you know everything. The only point of understanding is how to present yourself in an examination. And I will say, as I've said, if there was a presenter, I will be discussing the case as if someone is presenting in front of me. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, as I have said, when we are talking about who will be presenting what things, just give me a minute, please. Right. Now, so let us start then. So whenever we start, can you see my slides, please? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Right. If you can see the slide, the gentleman that we discussed in the last week had an unilateral inguinal complete hernia containing bowel as a content. So this was the profile of the patient. Let me see if yes, this is the profile of the patient that we were discussing in the last class. And as all of you had noted, the hernia was an unilateral, primary, indirect, inguinal hernia. So this appears to be an undergraduate diagnosis. What is important is the examiners in a postgraduate exit examination are required to ask you about more or less all the important points that you have. Now, what is important is the examiner will now like to take next 15 to 20 minutes. He is going to ask an consultant from another consultant, what is your plan for the treatment of this patient? Now, please do not jump and say that I'm going to do a open mesh or a Lichtenstein's hernioplasty. Please do not say this to start with. This is a postgraduate examination, and the examiner wants you to approach the patient as you would in a real life outpatient department or in your clinic. The first step will be that I explain to the patient the need for an elective surgery. Now, all said and done, those of you who are appearing for your MRCS particularly, remember that this is one of the ways called as an information giving, and this is an easy information giving way in which you are required to take a consent from an elderly gentleman, informing him about the hernia. And I am going to ask you, after I have discussed about this, what are the important points that you will be required to ask in something called as taking a consent for an hernia. Now, point number one is I will explain to the patient the need for an elective surgery.
नहीं है
The hernia that I showed you was an unilateral indirect hernia. I will plan an open anterior approach. I have not told the technique. Before the operation, I will tell the patient to stop smoking for a duration of around 4 to 6 weeks at least. If the patient is overweight, reduce the weight. And I will also advise the patient to go for pre-operative investigations that are necessary for a general anesthesia fitness. Please reorient the way you answer during an exit examination. Have you noted this down? Can I proceed?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If I can proceed, now this brings us to, in a postgraduate examination, this can open up an array of different questions from different areas. So first, as I've said, I will try to be from the best to the worst of all examiners. What I'm going to ask you is that, doctor, the patient says you need to have an operation done for a hernia. Can you tell me why are you planning an operation for a hernia? The patient, say, for example, is an 88-year-old gentleman. He does not wish to have the hernia operated. Versus your patient is a 45-year-old gentleman. This man is a businessman. This man is bedridden. Both of them have the same type of hernia. So tell me, when will you operate? Why will you operate? What is the answer to this, sir?
to prevent
Chances
further
of complication.
Number one. Number two. Number two. Okay. If you are talking about complications, as I have said, I would like to play the devil's advocate today. What is the chance that this inguinal hernia gets strangulated? What is the chance in indirect inguinal, complete reducible, that this hernia gets a strangulation? Come on, guys. Important data to remember. Hello. Hello. Anyone with an idea, sir? No
10
one?
to 20%.
10 to 20%, sir, is not the correct answer. 10 to 20% is what happens when the hernia occurs in a neonate. A pediatric hernia has a strangulation rate of about 10 to 20%. That is a child with an indirect hernia, and hence the dictum is any term infant who is born, he should not go home without the hernia being operated. Though I sound a bit radical in that, but pediatric surgeons and pediatricians recommend to have an term infant to have the hernia operated, because there is up to 20% chance that this neonate with a hernia, term infant, I'm repeating that point, should have the hernia operated to prevent an strangulation. That can be as high as 20%. But in an adult, if you read Sabiston, the chances can range from 0.25 to 0.75%, making it on an average of 0.5% is a chance of a strangulation. Definitely, femoral hernia has a chance of strangulation about 1%. So can still be justified with an operation. So now tell me, ladies and gentlemen, if a disease occurrence has a chance of 0.5% or less than 1%, is it really worth mentioning to that to prevent a complication? What is your opinion on that, sir? Because if you have some examiners who are really working on hernias, They are extremely well read. They are going to ask you what is the chance. You see, ladies and gentlemen, the most common cause of an operation of a hernia is because it produces pain. Number 3, the larger is the hernia, the repair becomes more difficult. And more difficult is the repair, there is increased chance of a recurrence of the hernia. So please reorient the way we will answer that in an exam. If someone is asking you, why did you repair a hernia, or why are you telling the patient to get operated? Sir, point number 1, it is a painful lump. Point number 2, with age, the hernia does not decrease, it increases. And more delayed do I do in the repair, it becomes more tough on the surgeon technically. And lastly, to prevent a complication. Some of you may bring up complication in the beginning, but again, as I have said, technically complication should be point number 3, but in an Indian examination system, you can bring it in point number 1. Now coming to the 88-year-old gentleman with a indirect complete inguinal hernia. What is your opinion on that? This is usually a postgraduate question. We don't think of asking this to undergraduate students. An 88-year-old patient with an indirect reducible inguinal hernia. What is your opinion, sir, on this group of patients? Okay. Now, the minute, sir, you talk the word something called as conservative, the minute the examiner is going to pounce upon you and ask you is that, what is that herbal medication that helps in reduction of a hernia? And you are going to smile that, okay, so well, I thought about having a cup of tea and there has been a tea called as a hernia tea. Now tell me, what is the conservative management of a hernia? Trust. Sir, please remember, as a postgraduate, reorient the way we talk. These are not called conservative, they are called as expectant management or observation for an hernia. And expectant management means you do not do any intervention, you don't give any medicine like an herbal tea. But what you tell the patient is to observe the hernia, number 1. Number 2, I will like to see or train the patient for any warning signs, in this case strangulation. And as a support, I will tell the patient to use a truss if the hernia can be reduced by the patient. And simultaneously, while I tell the patient to use a truss, the patient should have a normal mental orientation so that he can understand the safe use of a truss. Now, this is a domain that you are not very happy with, okay? Because you are asked.
Truss should be used in direct hernia, not in indirect.
Very good, very good, very good, sir. Really appreciate your point. So, truss is technically, remember, something to press upon the area. It is like a belt. So, the device will be looking like this. It looks like a belt, and the patient, now this is the area in which the patient, while lying down, makes the hernia go in, applies the truss, and then stands up. So as you have very, very appropriately mentioned, sir, this is very effective in a direct hernia. But when it comes to an indirect hernia, particularly a complete indirect hernia, a truss is going to be not only failure, but very dangerous, because you are giving an external pressure to the contents. So as it is an indirect hernia, and this, ladies and gentlemen, is called as an expectant management. Now, but as it is an indirect hernia, can you think about suggesting an operation for the gentleman? What is your opinion on that?
Yes, sir, should be done actually.
Very good. But the gentleman is 88 years old gentleman. Then in this case, if I am asked this question, I will tell, sir, I will counsel the patient and the relatives of the patient that any kind of an operation at this age, that is 88, can have its own perioperative risks.
Yeah, but can be done in local insurance.
Exactly. Very, very well pointed. So, and this is the way you represent in the form of examiner, but I can also attempt the operation by giving a local anesthesia. And this brings the avenue open for discussion on where are the sites or what are the techniques of an infiltration for an local anesthesia. Okay, that also means that we cannot think about doing probably a laparoscopy at this age, given the risk of general anesthesia. Right? So please remember that this is the way in an MS or a DNB examination, the examiner is asking you to think of what you would be doing in a real life world rather than memorize and vomit out things. The way you have answered is very, very encouraging. So please remember, this is the way we start. Why should you think about doing an operation in a hernia? I hope I have made the indications of hernia operation very clear.
So expected management only should be in direct hernia, not in indirect hernia.
Well, see, sir, I will discuss with the patient and the patient relatives. The patient relatives and the patient is adamant that they are not going to have it operated. Now, you as a surgeon, what is your option then? The only option remaining. You tell the gentleman, I am telling you to use a truss, but these are the bad things that are going to happen in truss. Okay, so these are the things that you are required to know. You may be laughing at me that why is this chap telling us truss in the 21st century? Well, the answer for this is still a very commonly used thing across developing countries particularly. So please remember that senior examiners can always ask you the role of truss. So this is what is important.
Expected management can be done in indirect hernia?
No, sir. Usually not. Indirect hernias like a bubonocele, ideally both in direct and indirect, truss should never be used because it leads to weakness of the inguinal canal. It leads to later atrophy of the muscle that leads to enlargement of the hernia. It can be associated with more chances of an obstruction in the hernia. Hence, truss is not a recommended way of treatment. But as I have said, you are giving an examination in India, and there will be some examiners who in their younger days were taught by their senior teachers to use a truss. So even in their private practice, they may have followed a very senior elderly gentleman, 90 years old. This gentleman may not be fit for an operation. In this, they have used truss. Have I made you understand the point, sir?
Yes,
okay?
Yes. Thank you.
Sir, types of truss, sir.
Types of truss. Sir, you are not usually required to know the types of truss because see, this is something that our generation had not used. Even honestly speaking, I have advised only truss twice or thrice in my life. You are not required to know the trusses or what are the types of truss.
It's a technique of local infiltration.
Technique of local infiltration. I think we had an operative surgery by Dr. Bakshi to be done. But sir, to just make a summary about the operative techniques, about how are these techniques, there are a couple of techniques that are done. The similar technique is you go around 2 centimeter medial to the anterior superior iliac spine. It is said to be that the point that the deep ring and the ilioinguinal nerve comes out in this point. The half of the dose of local anesthesia is given in a fan way spread based on 2 centimeter medial to this. You give it in all the tissue planes. The rest of the dose of the local anesthesia you use in infiltrating in layer by layer by the way you cut in and reach the deep inguinal ring. It is usually in the little experience that I do have. Well, local anesthesia is again required when you are fixing the mesh in the posterior wall. So I usually divide my local anesthetic drug dose. I forgot to say, I take a lignoadri because I'm going to have a large requirement. I divide this into 3 containers. As I have said, 50% of this is something that I use it for infiltration. The rest, about 30%, is something that I use it for that infiltration means that 2 centimeter injection. 30% is something that I use it for skin incision, and the rest 20% I use it around the posterior wall and the inguinal ligament when I'm fixing the mesh. So this is the way I will like to do an infiltration of local anesthesia. You are asked about this question. Yes, sir.
Can we use adrenaline in elderly patient?
Sir, depends upon whether the patient is hypertensive or not, arrhythmias or not. Last and the most important part of the story, does your anesthesiologist allow you to use or not? The number of cases that I do, I have a talk with my anesthesiologist. Can I use lignoadri? If he or she says yes, I do that. If he says that no, it will be dangerous for the heart, well, I use plain ligno.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so please remember these are all
Can
small.
we use bupivacaine
Sir,
along with
yes,
ligno and
yes, absolutely yes. You can use a mixture of lignocaine and bupivacaine. So these are used, but the only important thing is that the dose then of ligno decreases. If your anesthesiologist is happy on giving you a mixture with a sedation, please, you can use a ligno bupivacaine mixture.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so this is the first part of the story that is important, because in an exit examination, these are exactly the things that you are asked in an exam before you jump on to the Lichtenstein's procedure. Now, the second part of this procedure, the second part is what are the investigations that you are going to suggest in this patient? Now, the minute I talk about investigations in these categories of patients, the first group of investigations are those that are required for a general anesthesia fitness. Now, we are not anesthesiologists. I'm not interested in what investigations they are going to do. The only interest that I have is patients who are on aspirin, patients who are on CLOP. On this group of patients, when to stop and why to stop. The common rule is we don't stop aspirin, and CLOP is stopped about 7 days ago. Now, those said and done, if I'm using a patient on aspirin and CLOP, I always see the bleeding time, the clotting time, the prothrombin time at least 12 hours before the operation. This is something that I will always check before the operation. And though this is a hernia surgery, I will always like to have the blood group of the patient that is known before you put in the knife, because you never know where you are going to end up. So, and these, remember, are having medico-legal implications. Okay, so please understand that these drugs are important to you as a surgeon. We are not interested with other drugs. These are the things that are required in GA fitness. Now, what are the other investigations that I need, and why do I need these investigations? To begin with, I will need an urine for REME, and always I go for a culture. Why do you think that is a logical option? Why do you think that is a logical option? Hello.
Sir.
Very good. Please remember that you are going to use a prosthesis, and it is always important to rule out any sources of sepsis in the vicinity. So if the patient has a culture positive UTI or even an asymptomatic culture positive, please treat the UTI before you put in a mesh. Point number 1. Point number 2, extremely important, you may injure the bladder in a direct hernia. Don't say that I have not injured the bladder. Yes, you can. So always take a note. Please try to have a urine culture before you put on the knife. The next set of investigation that I require as a surgeon includes specific things for specific group of patients. To start with, patients with chest problems. Okay, like COPD, etc. What is the specific things that I require?
Pulmonary function test.
Okay. Anything more, sir?
FEV1.
So,
Spirometry?
spirometry, okay, done. Good. So these are again done by
HRCT.
your HRCT nowadays. I know that every patient needs an HRCT. Okay. So, but sir, these are things that are done by your chest medicine guys, isn't it? Or your pulmonary medicine guys. Now, to you as a surgeon, these are all important because you are required to ask this patient or your pulmonary medicine consultants two technical questions. Understand that as a surgeon. Number one, is the patient on steroid or not? If the patient is on steroid, what is the implication for you guys?
Chance of infection, sir.
Very good. Poor wound healing.
Wound healing?
So please remember, steroid is an important factor. If the patient has an active cough, what is the implication to you guys?
Failure of surgery.
Recurrence of
means
pneumonia.
take a consent that you can have a recurrence due to persistent cough. Okay, and always fix the mesh with a Prolene suture. Always make sure there is no tension while you are taking the bites on the mesh with the inguinal ligament, because Prolene is a expandable suture. Prolene has a very good tensile strength, but still always remember this part. Okay, so this is the first important thing that I wanted to talk in a pulmonary, that chest patient. If the patient has an active LRTI, always try to treat the LRTI and then proceed for the operation. Particularly is extremely important if you are having something called as a scrotal abdomen. What is a scrotal abdomen?
Small bowel inside this product.
Small bowel inside the scrotum, I know that, sir. What is a scrotal abdomen? Array?
Large inguinal hernias.
Large mane, kitna large? How large, sir? Sir, this is technically, exactly, someone of you are saying that this
More
is
than
a
20%
loss of domain. Exactly, sir. Remember in incisional hernias, we talked about loss of domain. This is a loss of domain inguinal hernia, where the hernia is technically irreducible and has the bowel and the omentum inside. So in a scrotal abdomen, what is important to understand is scrotal abdomens look exactly the same as we talk about in a large incisional hernias. So these patients will need a long pre-operative management. Can you tell me what are the pre-operative preparations that you are going to do in a patient with a scrotal abdomen? These are sometimes asked by your examiners. The first thing that your examiner will like to hear is, I will admit that
Headlock position.
Okay, I will like to have the patient admitted, and I do not know what help does it do, but examiners will like to hear you tell this. Patient is admitted and required to lie in a Trendelenburg. Beyond this, I will tell the patient to do spirometry, steam inhalation, something called as chest physio, which is a better word. Then some of you said that cardio fitness. Okay, so treat constipation. So these are all these things that examiners will like to ask you. When the patient has a scrotal abdomen, then what are the important things to understand in that? Have I made you understand about this, sir? This is what is important in patients with chest problem, COPD. Now, on the other hand, talk about patients with micturition difficulties, the prostate group. Now, the patient has a micturition difficulty. Now understand what age group are you talking. If you are talking about a child, what is the disease that you are ruling out?
Posterior urethral
Valve.
Posterior urethral valve. Oh my God. You are not thinking of the commonest disease in a child for which the mother can bring to you the baby.
Pinpoint
Phimosis. Phimosis.
Phimosis, sir. Phimosis. And then you have pinhole
Meatus.
meatus. And then, sir, you have something called posterior urethral valve. In child, you can also have those rare things called as, remember, those Ehlers Danlos and all of those funny things. Okay. But what is important is, why am I interested with phimosis and this pinhole meatus and posterior urethral valve?
More training.
Because I require an operation before this. Okay. And then after that part. So now talk about the other part. If it is an adult, what is the disease that you are going to rule out? So the disease that I'm going to rule out is an urethral stricture.
Yes.
And
Bladder outlet obstruction.
in an elderly, all the causes of a bladder outlet obstruction. Please remember that part. If it is a bladder outlet obstruction in that, so please understand this. Now, what is important is, in this age group, both of these, I will always send the patient to urology and I will ask their opinion when to do the operation. The simple logic of this is, sir, if there is an urethral stricture, then do the stricture first, followed by the hernia in a separate setting. The only reason for this is that strictures are known to have a lot of recurrence rates and a lot of complications, which can produce staining in the post-op period. Okay, so this is the reason this would be done first. But when it comes to a prostate or DHP, what are the investigations that you are going to suggest to your patient?
Serum PSA and PVR.
urodynamic studies.
So the first thing is that I have done a DRE. Please say that. The DRE tells you about the grades of prostatomegaly. The DRE tells you whether there is any nodularity in the prostate. The next is, along with the DRE, it is good to do a PSA.
Yes, sir.
You will do an ultrasound of the whole abdomen,
With PVR.
particularly KUBP, and I will like to see the volume of the prostate. These are things that we as general surgeons can understand. And if the patient, remember, has a symptom that is assessed by a score, what is the score that we use?
PIRAD. IPSS.
Is a score or a clinical score that the urologist is going to use, that is called as an IPSS, International Prostate SNS. What is this SNS, sir?
Symptom score.
Symptom score. It is not specific. It is symptom score. Then what is important is, based on the IPSS finding, particularly if the IPSS is greater than 8, it is always good to suggest the patient to go for a uroflowmetry, and better still, urodynamics, which are not, because your urologist is going to need the uroflowmetry results to decide on the medications and later followed by the surgery. These are things that you are required to know as a general surgeon. Even though your examiner may be a neurologist, as a general surgeon, these are the things that you are required to know in these times to talk about what you are going to do in these patients. Okay, chalo, done. Now, important questions to ask you is that, A 75-year-old gentleman has a 80 grams prostate, which means that you are going to plan technically something called HOLAP. Okay. Have you understood what is HOLAP, sir?
Holmium
Laser prostatectomy. Okay, or say for example, you plan a TURP. Let us make it easy. You plan a TURP. This patient has a unilateral inguinal hernia, which is indirect. Now that hernia is complete and reducible. The question, sir, is a very important exam question, or in a real world also. Which one will be operated first and why? Or can you combine the two operations?
Can combine.
You can combine. Okay, those of you who are saying combine, tell me the logic of combining.
Instead
One
of
is-
sitting both operations.
The same anesthesia to talk with. Okay, this is probably the single most advantage that I have. The elderly gentleman do not have to go anywhere. Under a single setting, you have done whatever you wished to do. Next one. Those who are against, like I am against this operation. What is the rationale of doing it against combining these two? What is your rationale?
Measurement.
Infection due to preventing.
Sir, the logic is very simple. TURP is done. Sir, prolonged anesthesia is one. TURP, remember, is done. What is the nature of surgery in TURP? Very straightforward. Clean, contaminated, or dirty. If the urine is not infected, then what is this one, sir? It is called as clean, contaminated. If the urine is infected, which is very obvious, then what will it become? Contaminated. Now tell me one important thing. Do you combine a clean surgery like a hernia with a clean contaminated or a contaminated surgery? Should you combine both these two?
So why urine will be infected?
Why urine is infected, sir? Complications of BHP, urinary stasis, UTI. That is a single reason.
We will give antibiotic, no, sir.
Okay, you will give an antibiotic. Very nice, sir. But why don't you avoid the operation? Let them do the TURP. 2 weeks down or 3 weeks down, we'll do the hernia. But again, your criticism is very straight. Number one, the anesthesia will change. Okay, and in a real world, not an official record. Well, if I am not doing it, someone else is going to do that. So no more jokes. But important thing is that the criticism against this is that the urine is infected in that. Now, to have a middle path, what we do is that if the urine is infected, then always we try not to combine. We do the TURP and then later followed by the hernia. But if the urine is clean, urine is not infected, then I will like to do the TURP. And along with the TURP, I like to do an open hernia. Why not a laparoscopic hernia? What's wrong with a lap hernia? Hello. Sir, what's wrong with the lap hernia?
GA should be given in there.
Point number one, please remember that TURP or HOLAP is going to use an energy source. The energy source can be associated with what technical complication in TURP? If you are inside the bladder, okay, particularly while you're taking out the lateral lobes and the median lobe and the upper part of the median lobe, particularly in a beginner who is doing a TURP, large prostate, you may lead to a micro perforation of the bladder, which is not very uncommon. Please remember that. If there is a perforation, where is the urine extravasated into?
That extraperitoneal.
Technically, the space of Redzius. And in a
Yes.
lap hernia, tap tape, whatever you do, where are you placing the mesh, sir? The Bogros. So now the difference between Redzius and Bogros is only this line. So let me erase this line. And your mesh now is happily in contact with the contaminated urine. Do you think that's a very nice option to have? I do not think so. But all said and done, there are n number of laparoscopic surgeons who believe in giving the mesh down there. But theoretically, this may produce a problem. Hence, the beauty about an open hernia is the fascia transversalis will act as a barrier, because in an open hernia, it is hoped that you are placing the mesh in front of the fascia transversalis. If you are doing a Lichtenstein. Hence, the criticism that is in favor is that you can do an open hernia and combine it with a TURP. In an examination, please remember, try to defend yourself in this way. Okay, right. So now we have talked about the two major things. That means the two major straining factors that we really need to discuss. The last part is, yes, sir.
Sir, about combining this procedure, if we do the only inguinal hernia first, then the TURP, still it's gonna contaminate my operative field.
No, I could not understand your question, sir.
I'm
That means you are suggesting.
hernia first, and then I'm doing TURP.
Sir, does it really matter in that way? Say, for example, you have done the inguinal hernia first, and then the urologist comes in, he does the TURP. Sir, if there is an urine extravasation, that is going to contaminate your mesh either way, sir. If you do it first or before, it is just a theoretical peace of mind that we are having, that, well, I am having a cup of coffee while the urologist does the TURP. Well, while he is doing the TURP, God knows what he is doing. Well, if you are doing both, then you know you have the control. If he is doing and you did the mesh hernioplasty, then, sir, it is just a theoretical matter of peace of mind.
So what about DRE?
To the transversalis fascia.
I could not understand. What about the
The
transversalis fascia?
infection in this case will be mainly through the transversalis fascia because of the procedure.
See, the infection is mostly because now the minute you do a catheterization, the minute you spill urine, or there is a micro perforation of the bladder, there is an extravasation of the urine. That is the only concern that we have in this patient. And a mesh infection is a disastrous thing. Hence, the old school of thought that don't combine this clean, contaminated and contaminated. So even if there is a good group of surgeons who still do not do a hernia combined with a TURP. But yes, there is another group of surgeons who do. But still the fight will still continue. The fight is not that easy to get stopped. Okay.
So what about DRE?
What about?
DRE means we should say that DRE is intended, or we should do DRE.
You should do DRE, sir. You should do DRE. As
Or
a
we just say DRE is
postgraduate, no, absolutely not, sir. At a postgraduate exam in a hernia, if you get a real patient, because the virtual no mode of examinations have changed our way that we think in the world. So remember that if you get a hernia, it is mandatory that you do a DRE. At least tell the patient that I have requested you to do a DRE. If you have not done the DRE, tell that when the examiner asks you, did this doctor do a DRE? Tell that I had refused to allow the gentleman to do a DRE. But please remember, it is mandatory for you to do a DRE because I wanted to look for the prostate. That is important, sir. Very important.
So what about other cases like in thyroid, where is no
Thyroid.
resemblance?
Sir, no, thyroid, I am not that intent. Breast should varicose vein should, arterial disease not required, abdominal lumps, abdominal cases always.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
In young age patient,
Young age means what is young age? Definitely now. A 24-year-old abdominal lump looks as a cancer of the cecum. Definitely do a DRE. 24-year-old, it looks like an appendicular lump. Well, you may not do a DRE. You can say to the examiner, it may feel that the patient is having discomfort and I will not have any additional clinical diagnostic signs to do on the DRE. But if it is a left lower quadrant lump in a 24-year-old male, yes, you should do a DRE.
Sir, there is no chance that we can do an open hernia repair before doing TURP. So,
No, I could not understand your question. Sir,
So
I
what
went
is the-
in.
what
I
is
went
the
in for
problem?
what is the
So what
problem
is-
of a lap hernia?
No, sir, open hernia we do first and TURP on a later
So
date.
that
and
is the
expertise
problem.
it.
No. See, the problem, sir, is that understand the basic thing. The prostate operation is done to avoid a staining factor. If you do the hernia operation today and you have given the mesh, the patient has a staining. The problem is that mesh is now under a tremendous pressure every day to prevent the hernia, and you will have a recurrence, sir. So it is good that
Patient will be on medication, sir.
Sir,
Or-
these are all guided by the what medication you have given are all guided by something called uroflowmetry. What is the Qmax? Technically to talk about. If your Qmax has improved with the addition of drugs, but remember the addition of drugs takes at least 3 to 6 months, even if you use a combined therapy. So both your alpha blockers, both your testosterone inhibitors, it takes a combined thing takes 3 to 6 months for the Qmax to improve. So by this thing, it is better to talk to your urologist. Sometimes what they do is that if you are so intent on doing the hernia, they will do a procedure called as TUIP. That means they give an incision at the neck of the median lobe that relieves partially the obstruction. Patient can void urine, do the hernia, 1 to 2 months down, they will be doing the TURP.
So otherwise, we wait for 3 to 6 months.
Otherwise, you can wait for at least 4 weeks, sir. Minimum 4 weeks. Let the inflammation settle down. This is the much logical thing to do. Now, all said and done, people across India do this combined. So, because they feel that the patient will go away. There is only single straightforward reason. There is no other logic in that.
So then
Okay.
only a urologist can do this combined. Sir.
TURP? No, why cannot use it? TURP is a procedure the general surgeon should know how to do. Believe me, TURP you don't need to be a urologist. Okay. Now, on the other side, tell me, if you are doing a lap chole with an inguinal hernia, what is your opinion? Will you combine this?
It is for cholecystitis, we will not.
Open hernia.
Come on, man. Why are you doing lap chole? Array, you are not doing lap chole for a cancer gallbladder, man. You are doing it for a symptomatic stone. And the patient has a hernia. The patient is requesting your doctor, I'm going to have a lap chole. Can you also do the hernia for me? What is your opinion?
Hernia lap or open, sir?
No. Come on, man. You are the surgeon. You have to tell the patient.
Can be done, sir.
You can be done. Okay, very good. Lap chole first, and then inguinal hernia, or the vice versa.
Inguinal hernia first, then lap chole.
Lap core followed by hernia.
Very good. Today I should have taken that opinion poll thing. Okay, lap chole first, followed by inguinal hernia. The gentleman who said that, what is the rationale behind this? Lap chole is a difficult. Yes. Very well said, sir. Absolutely very well said. If you ask me what is the algorithm that I follow, now don't ask me what is the evidence behind this, because there are very few papers on this, on combined laparoscopy. that are written by laparoscopic surgeons who have claimed that they have done. Hence, it is evidence. It is not. There are not still strong evidences that there are. Now, what is my algorithm that I do? When I have a patient who requires a lap chole and I have a patient who requires a hernia surgery in the same patient, I gauge which one is more important for the patient, or the patient is symptomatic for which one more. If lap chole is the first requisite, I try to do the lap chole and tell the patient that if there is a bile spill, as you have very rightly said, if I spill the bile, then no hernia operation, even an open hernia, mind you. If there is no bile spill, then I usually try to do an open hernia. I try not to do a lap hernia, but yes, you can criticize me. You can always say that, sir, you could have done a TEP. I understand TAPP is a procedure that I will not be doing, because if there is a post-operative bile leak, things are not at all very nice then. But TEP, I do not know. I have no experience. But in these patients, when there is no bile spill, I will like to do an open hernia. Whereas if you think of a bile spill, I will definitely not do a hernia surgery at that day. On the other hand, if I talk to the patient and feel that the hernia is the main problem, then I will like to proceed with the hernia, either a lap or an open, whatever suits me, whatever the hernia demands. But the only question is that if you are doing a lap hernia, the only question about doing is the next lap chole, the port for the lap chole, whatever you do, should not come in contact with the mesh that you are using. That means if you are doing a TAPP, please, if you are making an infraumbilical incision, the lap chole port is better done as a supraumbilical port. The basic rationale is only one, again, that bile spill story. This is the rationale about doing this operation. Okay, so this is what I follow in my practice. If I am the student in an examination, this is the way I will defend myself.
What about tape, sir?
Tape, sir, you can do, but sir, the problem in tape and tap is not that. You have to make an access at some point. In the TP also, you have to make an umbilical incision, sir. You have to enter through the subumbilical region, then make a recto space. So again, that same question in a lap chole, if you are making a port, either it is an umbilical or a subumbilical or a supraumbilical port. Whatever you do, that thing should not come in contact with the mesh.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is about few technical decisions, because I felt these are things that are not written in your books, and these are things that are asked. The last one, and I will end today, is what is the procedure that you will do? Now, please listen to this, and then I will take all my criticisms and queries. Now, and don't laugh at my algorithms that I make. Okay. Now, guys, understand the story first. If it is a primary, unilateral, indirect, or direct, and if the age of the patient is more than 18, in an elective scenario, I go for a mesh hernioplasty. Always. Open or lap is something that we'll talk within a minute. If the age is less than 18, then it is good only to do a herniotomy. That hernia is an indirect hernia. Okay. Age greater than 18, strangulated hernia, in which you have a bowel or an omentum. In an exam, I will like to do a herniorrhaphy. I will not like to use a mesh to understand. It is not that you cannot give a mesh. It is preferably this becomes a dirty operation. It is not rational and it is not in the principles of surgery to use the prosthesis in a dirty operative field. If you are using that, you are not following the principles of surgery. And I'm blunt in this. Please remember that. I have had my residents who have tried to put in a mesh in a strangulated hernia, and I get very angry at that because this is something that you should not have done. Okay. Now talk about a bilateral hernia. Talk about a recurrent hernia. And this is at any age. My answer is I will always prefer a laparoscopic hernia repair if facilities oblique training exist. This is what I will say in an examination, sir.
Recurrent if surgery is open.
No. So I could not understand, sir. Recurrent is?
Means if primary surgery is done, open surgery, we'll go for lap.
Not always, sir. Recurrent can be due to anything. It can be a lap hernia that has recurred. It can be an open hernia that has recurred. So the question is not about why did the patient, how or what operation led to a recurrence. The question is what plane you are going to put the mesh in and how are you going to enter the preperitoneal space. So that is the matter of question. The question is not which operation led to a recurrence, open hernia or a lap hernia. Now, previously people had a concept that lap hernia recurrence do an open hernia recurrence do a lap. These things are very old now. We have bypassed those things. The only thing that we have understood is that if you have done a TEP, the next time doing a TEP is damn difficult, do a TAPP and the vice versa. If you have done a TAPP or the patient has an abdominal adhesions, laparotomies, etc., it is better to do a TEP rather than a TAPP. So this is the way that we go, sir. We should have a very clear thoughts in our mind. Now, the final question is, what answer will you tell the examiner in your choice for an operation? Now, as I have said, if the hernia is a bilateral hernia or a recurrent hernia, if the examiner asks me, what is your treatment of that you are going to advise? My answer is very clear, sir. I will prefer a lap hernia repair if the facility or the training exists. Do not say, I will do a lap hernia, I will do a lap hernia. The examiner may not be doing lap hernia, may not be liking lap hernia, but to appease him, you say, I will be doing a bilateral open hernia is not again a right answer. There are now, I am going to show you evidences today. That strength of evidence across 40 years of laparoscopy, that bilateral and recurrent hernias, I will always prefer lap hernias if facilities and training exist. And I'm speaking to you from a very neutral platform, being a general surgeon, being a minimal access surgeon. The question, sir, is not bilateral or recurrent. The question is, or say, India wants to know is, what are you going to do if it is a primary unilateral hernia? Now, we are not interested in direct or indirect. I am interested in a reducible hernia, which is indirect or direct inguinal. Now tell me, what are you going to do? Now, in this answer to this, I have a different approach. Please listen to me for the next 5 minutes and then I hope I will be able to change your approach as well. At this point, let us be a little philosophical and I will say only one question. Ask yourself a very important fundamental question. Are you confident in lap hernia? I have only one question to you, sir. Are you confident in a lap hernia? If the answer to this is yes, that means you have done or you have assisted in an n number of operations, or you have done lap hernias, then your answer should be, sir, if facilities exist with a trained surgeon, a laparoscopic hernia repair can be attempted. Otherwise, and open hernia repair can be done. If the answer to this question is no, you have only seen lap hernias in YouTube or in conferences. You have dreamt that you are doing a lap hernia in your dreams. You have woken up in your dreams and then again you open the YouTube to see a robotic hernia. Very good. Congratulations. You need to pass the exam to do all these funny things. Then please remember that. Tell, I will offer the patient open mesh hernioplasty. At this point of time, the examiner has two options to talk. One, this examiner is a senior examiner who does open hernia. He is very happy and he can ask you questions on open hernia. And after that, he is learned enough. He asks you question on lap hernia as what are the alternatives and evidences. The examiner is like me. He has lots of black hair. He is a young guy, mustache. He asks you, why open? Can you not do lap? Then your answer for this is very simple. Sir, laparoscopy is an alternate option with equal outcomes. I have seen an assisted open hernia and have seen my teacher do open hernia. Sir, my answer is complete. I do not know whether you have ever heard anyone teach like this or talk like this.
But sir, the gold standard is the open repair, no?
Sir, there is no gold standard, sir. I am going to show you all the gold and the platinum today. Don't worry. We made this algorithm. This is what is the answer that you should give in an exam. Believe me. And this is for all kinds of examiners. Those who have only done open hernia, they snub at people who do lap hernia. To the other end of the spectrum, where your examiner may be a pioneer in a lap hernia. This is for all kinds of examiners that this is your answer. But the fundamental question is only one. Are you confident in lap hernia? I have seen candidates, believe me, who have said in an examination at a national forum, I will do a lap hernia because his teacher was doing a lap hernia and he did not understand what was done. And the rest 20 minutes was really one among the worst times in his life. And as an audience or as a teacher in the group, well, I really felt very bad for that student. He had, now, please tell something that you can do, sir. That is going to make you pass the exam. And after the examiners are happy, then we can talk. We can have a discussion. Please ask me any questions if you like, because I'll end the class within 10 minutes by showing you two things.
Sir, recurrence is more in lap or open?
Same.
Can lap hernias be done for large inguinal hernias?
Yes, it can be. The only requisite for a lap hernia, I'm going to show you all the evidences today. I'm going to show you two things that is probably going to change the way you think of a lap hernia. Now, though I am a minimal access surgeon, though I have my training in lap hernias, But believe me, when I teach my residents, I will always teach them to do a good open hernia surgery. Let them go for a good mesh hernioplasty. In emergency, let them do a good herniorrhaphy. Then, after they have understood, after they have made me understand the anatomy of the inguinal region, then I will ask them to start thinking about doing a lap hernia. Because only problem in a lap hernia is only one. It needs a very different anatomical orientation. I hope all of you will agree with that one. I think Dr. Rudrajit Sinha has taken an excellent class on lap hernia anatomy. To do a lap hernia, your open hernia knowledge does not get translated, sir. This is a different world. That is a different lingo. So you need to reorient yourself. Okay, other questions, please.
Can you explain?
Pardon, please. Hello?
Can you explain loss of domain?
Loss of domain. Sir, I think if you have an incisional hernia, I will be explaining that in very detail. What is Tanaka's index, etc. Those things I will be explaining to you. If I am given a case of incisional hernia, I will be explaining that in detail, sir.
Sir, another question.
Yes, sir.
Which is more morbid?
Presenting the case of inguinal.
Sir, your sound is getting an echo. Can you come close to the mic, please?
Sir, whether we have to classify in relation to Gilbert classification or EHS classifications?
Sir, I do not. Well, I've heard about Mr. Gilbert. I have my respects to the gentleman who invented something called Prolene hernia system. But in this modern era, if you are at all asked any classification, this is the EHS. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Why? I'm going to now show you, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to show you two things. The first thing in concern is, just give me a minute. The first thing in concern is this thing. Can you see my screens, please? Hello?
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
These are all free documents that you get across the internet. This is something called as, this picture is the EHS picture. Now, this is something called as a summary of the publication that was published in 2018.
Soda and pig.
Hello? Hello? Am I audible, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Right. This is a publication, ladies and gentlemen, by only one group called as European Hernia Society, who are based in Madrid. Now, that is a publication dated 2018. Their website is called as herniasurge.com. You can visit their website and you can visit their Facebook page. Now, what this is important is, they published it in 2019 and they told you about very beautiful, you can take this printout also. They are so beautifully given, like, as someone of you asked me, can you talk about the Gilbert? Okay. Can you see what is this thing that is written in front of your screens now? This is what the European Hernia Society tells you to do. Okay. Agreed, sir? Understood?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you talk about what are the indications of an operation, the thing that we started the day with. Please remember that the indication of an operation is again discussed. Now, let us talk about surgical treatment of inguinal hernias. Please understand, they have again tried to make you read about this with a very beautiful recommendations that you have now in your screens. I'm going to read a couple of them. Despite comparable results, three-dimensional implants are not recommended. Please remember, plug and patch and bilayer are not recommended. Number 3, can you read this point number 3, sir? Can you read someone? Can you read the point number 3 that is written?
The use of other implants to replace the standard flat mesh
is not recommended. That means all the new devices that come, they are not recommended. Now, point number 4, tap and tape of this.
problem, sir.
Well, I do not take names, sir. Maybe. See, these are again, this is one among the most strongest guidelines that has evolved over the time. Okay. See the last one. Can you read the last one? Laparoendoscopic repair is recommended for repair of primary bilateral inguinal hernias, provided that a surgeon with sufficient expertise and resources is available. That means that same MBBS dictum that we have been to do a lap hernia, bilateral and recurrent. No, sir. This is the, please read an EHS classification and know what they have said. And also they have said that this is the heading of individualization of treatment options. They have tried to be very specific in this guideline, what is to be done. Please remember that. Now, the strength of evidence is not strong, but strength of evidence is weak. Can you read the third point? I'm going to read the third point to you. In male patients with primary unilateral inguinal hernia, a laparoendoscopic is suggested because of lower postoperative pain, the reduction in chronic pain incidence, provided that a surgeon with specific and sufficient resources is available. However, there are patient and hernia characteristics that warrant a Lichtenstein as first choice. If this is what is the statement of EHS, have I made my point clear, sir? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Have I removed the doubt in your mind? Should I talk about an open hernia or a lap hernia and a primary unilateral? This is the 2018 EHS guidelines that is present in the internet now. Okay? Simultaneous to this, you can talk about other things like what is the type of the mesh, what is the quality of the mesh that you can use, okay, what is the type of anesthesia in which some gentleman told me about local. Please remember, see the EHS recommendation. Local is the recommended anesthesia of choice, provided they have this part. Antibiotic prophylaxis is not recommended in a low risk environment, average risk patient. Please remember this part. Okay. Even if you're doing a lap hernia, this. So these are again all the recommendations that we have said. What is next important is, if that was what was 2018, then, ladies and gentlemen, I have a publication in front of you. This is again a freely downloadable publication. Can you see the book? Oh, sorry, can you see the journal? It is Surgical Endoscopy, one among the most respected journals in minimal access. And this is the latest means 2020 recommendations. We don't have of 21 yet. And out of this, am I audible, everyone? Hello?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
And this thing is something more than EHS. Till date, you have known only EHS. Now, this is something more than EHS. Now, the EHS was criticized that, guys, you are Europeans. Why should Indians obey you? Or why should Americans follow you? So what they did was, they came together, and after they came together, see the number of societies that came together. Can you see? The Asia Pacific hernia, the Afro-Middle East, Australasian hernia, in a simple word, the world came together. If the world came together with this part, they now made this publication, which I think should stop all criticisms about what should be done. And they took an interesting poll about what should be done. And in this, I'm going to talk only on few topics to know in which of we are interested. Okay. Now, see this question. Can you see this line that you have in front of your screens now? Mesh is recommended as the first choice, either by open or by a laparoendoscopic technique. Can you this, sir? Can you see this? Hello? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, right. Now, the next part of knowing is, now see, the question, the ubiquitous question that remains, open lab. What is the thing that is written? Let me see if I can have the marker. Just allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to have the marker. Yes, I think I can. Now, what is written is, one standard repair for all does not exist. It is recommended that surgeons provide both anterior and posterior approach. Surgical treatment should be tailored to the surgeon's expertise. Hernia surgeons suggest Lichtenstein or laparoendoscopic as optimal technique, that means European hernia surgery. Provided the experience is there, endoscopic has a faster recovery, lower chronic pain, and cost effective. Did you see the answer between open hernia and lap hernia? Okay. So this is all about things, sir, to talk about in an open hernia and lap hernia. In open hernia, please remember that Lichtenstein is recommended over a preperitoneal mesh like a stopa. If you are doing a hernia or RAFI, then they said about a Schulde is recommended. Then they have also said you should know about the nerve. And finally, pragmatic resection of ilioinguinal nerve. That means if you are cutting the ilioinguinal nerve is recommended if iatrogenic nerve injury occurs, if the nerve interferes with the mesh position. That means during the surgery, planned prophylactic ilioinguinal nerve dissection is not suggested. How many of you do this ilioinguinal nerve cutting? Hello, I cannot take a poll. But if you did take a poll, I think today's little talk is going to change the way you do. Now, if you think about a lap hernia surgeries, primary unilateral inguinal hernia lap endoscopic technique is suggested. Lower pain, reduction in chronic pain. Now, this is important, provided the surgeon has that expertise. What is better, TP or TAP? They have the same results in that. So, with this, sir, I will end today. Okay. You can read these articles. These are again free to download. Or if possible, what I will do is that I will post it in your WhatsApp groups. These two things. This one and the European Hernia Society guidelines. So,
biological mesh, sir?
Biological mesh, sir, I will not be giving you that answer today. The only request is that please read the document. This will be an interesting read, believe me. This is going to be a very interesting read. And this is going to change your way, the thing that you think of. Okay? Right then. Any more queries? I don't think so. Okay? Thank you then, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good night, sir.
Good night.
Thank you, sir.